Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Trader Merlin Show for your Wednesday edition. Happy Hump Day, and CPI numbers always keeping us on our toes today. That will be one of the big topics for today. You guys saw the little tweet I put out there earlier about Jerome Powell looking at that CPI number today going, oh, man, backing himself into a little bit of a corner. So I wanted to, of course, go to listener questions, as I like to do. Whatever you guys want to discuss, feel free to just throw it out there into chat, or the easier way is to email me at tradermerlin@gmail.com. That way I can take a little bit of time to prepare. And this next, hey, Rita, good to see you. This next question from Alex, it's something that we've already touched on, which was nuclear power. We did a show several months back where I talked about nuclear energy and what that might mean, and what the impacts are, and what are some of the major players out there. And I will post that into the chat here. Let's put that in there so you guys can all have that one. So this is for those of you who have not seen that show. Most of you were in that session, but some of you that might be new, that's a good, like a, what do you call it, a primer for today's discussion, which is talking about nuclear demand. And we talked a lot about this over the past few months, this is where the trends are going. So Alex says, can you offer talk about, I just copy and pasted, so you typed it wrong there, Alex, but can you offer talk about nuclear energy stocks, or like to add it to my IRA account? Sure. So that show that I just posted in the chat it's very broad, right? It just kind of covers the different market segments and what are some of the bigger players in the space. And I'll talk about, recommendations for companies, etc., and how I would play this. First thing for me is you want to see if there is, in fact, demand going on for nuclear. And that's pretty evident. I started to put together a little bit of a list here of the major players, but maybe I'll just read through some of them. Microsoft, last year, they've got bid a $1.6 billion deal with Constellation Energy. They also have a nuclear fission deal with Helion Energy. You move into something like Amazon. They did a $320 million megawatt facility with SMR, which of course some of you are holding SMR in your portfolio and doing quite well. They did a $500 million deal with X Energy. They did a deal with Dominion Energy. On March of last year, they purchased a nuclear power data center for Pennsylvania at $500 million, and the list goes on and on and on. Meta, June of this year, so just last month, did a 20-year deal with Constellation Energy. We talked about that one on the program. Last year, Meta called for nuclear developers to build a 4-gigawatt facility. Google signed an agreement with Kairos Power that's again with SMR. You had Google also at TAE. So bottom line is massive demand. It's really interesting because it seems like every data center, every AI firm that's really entrenched in that space is gobbling up as much as they can and having the foresight to look out and say, where are we going to get this energy from? Not just for our data centers, but for AI in general and anything else, maybe even electrical vehicles, even in case of Google. The tricky part here was, well, not tricky, but the strange part was, in looking at the research, Apple really is not making a lot of major acquisitions or diving into that space. Now, there was in March of this year, a pledge by several of the companies to triple the nuclear energy capacity by 2050, and that was Meta, Google, and Amazon. So obviously those are the big three we mentioned. But bottom line is, to me, it is really, really growing exponentially, that demand. So to Alex's question, where do we go from here? Where do we look for investment opportunities? And there are a lot of different ways we could go about this, but I'll start off with the lazy layman's approach, which is what I would do. Okay, here's what I would do. Because there's so much uncertainty around a lot of these companies, and I see Rita talking about Oklo. Yeah, Oklo had a huge deal today. Oklo won a contract to build the nuclear energy plant for an Air Force base in Alaska, and their stock was up big today. Let me show you that chart here. Let's go look at Oklo. OKLO. Not only that, they had a monstrous up day. They were up 29%, and then they offered, no, they didn't offer, but they're going to issue another $400 million worth of shares. So that's going to dilute the share value. That's not great, but when you're up 29%, I guess a 5-step dance backwards is not that big of a deal. So yeah, Oklo doing absolutely fantastic today. But here's what I would myself look at. I look at something like NLR. I would start with ETFs. Alex, if you cherry pick one nuclear company and it doesn't become the one that pans out, right now, Oklo sounds great because it's got Sam Altman behind it and lots of big names backing it. But what if they don't succeed, right? What if some stumble along the way, they do something dumb, they have a mistake, and that one company implodes? Then you're toast. If you went out and did SMR, New Scale Power, another one that was up 20% today, just absolutely fantastic. I mean, screaming to the upside. This is such a gorgeous chart since early April. You're up a couple 100% since then. What if you pick this one and they also drop the ball? So I personally, and this is just my approach for long-term investments, unless I'm absolutely certain about something like I am about Bitcoin, I would diversify my holdings across a broad spectrum of investments, and that would lead me to something like, there's a couple that come to mind, NLR, and it's interesting because these nuclear energy ETFs, this is the Van Eck Uranium and Nuclear ETF. If we put the volume on here, you can see that over the past month, there's been significant increases in demand for this ETF. A lot of them don't have, URAN, I'll bring up URAN as well. Any nuclear in XLE? Yes. Some of the companies in XLE are in it, but that's not their primary focus. I'd have to really pick that one apart, Margaret, XLE. Notice the volume here. Even like today, this only did 630,000 shares. So your volume is very limited. If you go back a couple of months into mid-April, you're only doing 100,000 shares a day. Not very good. And most of these nuclear energy ETFs don't have significant volume. So there's Van Eck, and I'll show you the better thing to do here would be to dig into those. Let's look at what Big Ed was mentioning, which was URAN. URAN, extremely low volume. I mean, today alone, you had 8,000 shares. So what I would do is I'd put these side by side, and one of my favorite ways to do that would be to go to bar chart. You guys all know I like bar chart, and you'll just go up here and click at the very top. It says search for a symbol. Type in NLR, and you can do this for any ETF. And I always recommend that you do it, and it'll give you a sense as to what the industry looks like as well. So we scroll down on the left to hello, where did it go? I must have the wrong company on here. NLR. Okay, make sure I got the right dang ticker symbol in there. And it's taken forever to load it. It loaded up NVIDIA, that's why it was taking so long. So my apologies. I'm not sure why this is taking so incredibly long to pull up this NLR. What you're looking for is the constituents, basically looking at what the different components are. Yeah, Margaret, it's because for some reason it's bookmarked to my authors page over at Bar Chart, which I don't write articles for them anymore, and I'm not sure why this is just not working. I'm going to close this out and bring up Bar Chart again. Something was wrong with Bar Chart, so let me see if I can bring it up. The reason I want you to always look at that is it'll tell you what they're holding. And my guess is that the ETF that Big Ed recommended, which was URAN, yeah, URA is more liquid. URA is probably the most liquid one. But URAN, very illiquid. Let's try this again. NLR. I'm not exactly sure why this is not working for me today. Well, the point there would have been to look at the different components and see what the heavier weightings are. And therefore, if you were going to try to cherry pick and go individually, then you would be able to break down each one of those different components. There you go. Thanks, Chad. Most of those are going to be in this ETF if it ever loads up for me on this. I don't know. Maybe it's my computer today. I did a speed test. I'm doing great. So here's NLR. It's the Van Eck Uranium Nuclear. You scroll down, and on the left-hand side, there's the constituents. This is what I've been trying to get to for this last minute and a half. Okay. So most of the stuff that Chad just put in there, you have CEG, which is Constellation Energy. And notice Constellation Energy is involved with everybody. They're doing things on, they're doing things with Meta, they're doing things with Amazon. So they're right now the biggest player, it looks like, and they're also the biggest holding in this ETF at 8.47%. But there's Oklo, 7.52%. There's SMR. So these, in my opinion, are your real big three players. But there are a lot of other ones in here. You've got I don't know how you pronounce it, but Cameco, I don't know PEG, but you hear, this is strange when you have PCG, Pacific Gas and Electric Company. Well, I don't know if I would call them a big nuclear player. But you have Uranium Energy, so there are some uranium pieces in here. You have Paladin Energy, you have BWXT, which another nuclear one. So, and Next Gen. So that's one way to look at it. Let's go look at URAN just for entertainment purposes, and I could probably pull up a side-by-side comparison. URAN, there it is. And this is, again, much more thinly traded. We'll look at URA as another one. This is how I would start, is I would go with an ETF, and then as you got more comfortable, I would look at acquiring individual securities if you felt like that was the way to go. For me, I don't know enough about nuclear energy, so I really would not want to expose myself to one only. And I know some of you here are. Some of you here have. It's not even showing the constituents of this one. We didn't even get the components of this ETF. That's not a good sign. No information on that ETF. Let's go to URA, which was a much more liquid one. That is GX. Is that the GX Uranium ETF? Let me just check to make sure. XLETF should include nuclear. It does, Andres, but it's not going to be a targeted focus on nuclear, right? XLE is kind of broad and can include all sorts of energy. For Alex here, it sounds specifically like he's saying, I want nuclear. I don't want to work. I don't want fossil fuels, and I want wind, and I want solar. I want just straight nuclear. And if that's the case, then you're going to want to go with something that's not XLE. So here is that GX Uranium ETF. Constituents, and you'll notice a lot of repeated names here with just different weightings. So there's your Cameco, there's your Oklo, there's your SMR, NuScale. You have some other ones in here that might seem a little bit odd, like Hyundai Engine, and I don't know what that one is. But this one's overweighted, in my opinion, in one stock at 23.72% in Cameco. So, Big Up says, URAN has CEG as its top holding, SMR, Okla, and others. Yeah. And again, this all depends on what Alex's objectives are or what your goals are. I know the goal, right? It's moronic to ask, what's the goal? The goal is to make money on this one. But as you look at the field of players here, they're all very different. Some are doing these kind of compact micro reactors. Others are looking to open up, silos at 3 Mile Island, reactors at 3 Mile Island. Others are trying new fields of exploration and building out new power plants. So depending on which area you think has the most opportunity, go for it. Oklo with these kind of micro reactors and SMR as well, it seems like an interesting concept. Instead of building all this massive infrastructure, we can do it with a much smaller footprint and generate targeted power for these projects. That sounds very appealing, but what I don't know, and I'm not smart enough to know, is that going to be the path going forward? Or is it, hey, just open up 3 Mile Island again, let's retrofit that bad boy and get it back online? Then that's going to benefit another area of developers or publicly traded companies. So because I don't want to take the time to dive into all that and be just as, how would I say it, as knowledgeable about nuclear as I am about crypto, I don't know. I got too many other things on my plate to dive into the nuances of all of that. So I personally would say I would probably go with NLR just because it had a fairly diversified upper band of holdings with all the major names that you saw come through there in the chat. All right. Let's see what the chat has been going on here. Nuclear energy stocks are soaring, and it's by far the hottest energy sector in 2025. Cameco Corp 50. Yeah, it's huge. And, question for everyone is, do you think that this is going to slow down or do you think it's going to speed up, right? Is this surge that we're seeing? And here is the ETF. Let's just bring up NLR. Is this surge that we've seen over the past couple of months, and really it's only a couple of months where we've seen this ETF, this Van Eck Uranium and Nuclear ETF, skyrocket. I mean, it's been a huge rally from bottom to top of 61% in 45 trading sessions. For me, I am of the opinion, and I think that my thoughts on crypto and AI and EV will echo this, is that we're not going to go backwards with regards to energy consumption, right? It's not like, hey, you know what? You're right. Let's just get rid of all the computers and we'll go back to a pen and paper or an abacus to do my calculations. No, I want quantum computers to do things thousands of times faster. So it would seem to me that this train of technological evolution is going to get faster and faster. And for that, it needs more energy. So I think long term, if you're thinking the next 10 years, I'm pretty sure that no matter where you buy, like if you were to buy today a diversified ETF of nuclear energy stocks and your timeline is 10 years, you're going to look back and go, that was a great trade. Now, could you have gotten NLR, this ETF for $85? Maybe it falls to $87 over the next couple months. Like I say, when you go down the road 10 years and this thing is now split, it's at $300 and it's split 10 to 1 and you're up 300%, it's going to be like, who cares? Who cares if I got it at 100 or if I got it at $87, right? At least that's my take on it. I do think that there's going to be significant increase in it. Now, it may go other ways. Hopefully, from my perspective, hopefully we develop some alternative energy that harnesses the greatest energy source in the galaxy, our sun. Now, solar it works, but it's not very efficient and costs too much money to make it. But at some point, we might come up with technology that directly pulls that energy straight out of the sunlight and much greater power. And who knows, maybe that ends up being a new source. But for now, your kind of biggest bang for your buck is going to be nuclear. And I don't see anything derailing that other than maybe a political change. Right now you have, I would say, the right office in there. I think that Trump is going to be okay with more nuclear. He's already talked about how he wants to expand energy. If we switch at the next election and Democrats take over, are they going to be as comfortable with nuclear? I don't know the answers to those things. We'll have to wait and see down the road how that transpires. But I think it feels somewhat inevitable that nuclear energy is going to get more and more and more demand. So, Alex, that's my 2 cents on it. The picture here I've got with nuclear demand, it's pretty clear to me what that trend is. Trump wants coal, yes. Trump wants fossil fuels. Not just coal, he wants fossil fuels. And, we could make pro arguments for fossil fuels, we could make negative arguments for fossil fuels, and we could do that for both sides, right? So if you're a clean energy buff, we could look at some of the clean energy aspects and go, well, that's good on one hand, it's bad on this and this and this. So there's never the perfect solution. And Steven says, I'd rather have nuke than coal. Well, I guess the truth would probably be, what would you rather live next to? First off, I would move. I don't want to live next to a nuclear power plant. I certainly don't want to live next to a coal stack just spewing out gold. But there's clean coal, Merlin. There's clean coal. Right. Okay. I'm with you, Margaret. I wouldn't want to live near either one. But if I had my choice, I would probably go nuclear. I think, like I say, bang for the buck, nuclear is going to do a little bit better. And Tofi, that's always going to be the fallback is, what about Chernobyl? What about 3 Mile Island? We have much better technology today than what we had in Chernobyl. Of course, Chernobyl, you're talking Eastern Europe, which may not have had the best fail-safes, best standards whatsoever. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. 3 Mile Island, learn from your mistakes. And I think now the systems are better. Checks and balances are better. The understanding of it's better. It feels like there will be much better safety guards put in place for that if it were to happen. Look, I'm pro-nuclear. I'm going to put a little nuclear radioactive symbol on my tattoo, right next to the tattoo that says "The trend is your friend" to the bend at the end. That will be my next tattoo. Okay, lively close to one and work there. Cool. Oh, what, a coal mine or nuclear? Coal ruins everything. Yeah. And I saw what Margaret posted there. Scrubbers. Yeah, they have scrubbers, but I still wouldn't want to live near one. Absolutely not. A nuclear accident would derail the search. Absolutely, Andres. Just like a massive refinery fire or a pipeline running from, Oklahoma to the Gulf of Mexico exploding would cause a derailment of crude oil in the United States. So there's always going to be that spectrum of probability, right? And what most people are going to do, at least on the data side, is they're going to create a data graph. And it'll be a bell curve, right? That has the standard deviation. What's the probability of that nuclear event happening? And what's the probability of something, an incident never happening? We'll draw that curve and then calculate those risks. And certainly a lot of that will have to do with the placement of these facilities. Is it good or bad that AI is a power hog? Great question, Margaret. I mean, the reality, I believe, is this. Right now, they're power hogs because we're still developing chips that can process more information. You know, the new Rockwell chip from NVIDIA uses considerably less power and gets you much more computation. Just like Moore's Law, and I believe it's been so long since I was in college or even high school, but Moore's Law was technology will get twice as fast and cost half as much every 18 months, I believe is what Moore's Law was. We will probably see something similar where energy, or the energy used for these chips, processors to calculate all this stuff will become less and we'll get much more computational output. As time goes on, that just seems to be another trend, right? Which is faster calculations and less energy consumption. So hopefully that will get there. We got plenty of coal mines in the east part of Kentucky, thankfully. Yeah. Lucky you on that East Coast. Space solar power, beaming clean energy from orbit could change everything. 24/7 power, no emissions. True. You know, could we cover the entire backside of the moon or, you know, cover the whole moon's surface with reflective things to collect solar energy? You know, there's all kinds of speculative stuff that we could do. Ideally, I think we would all agree that we would like to have infinite power as clean as possible and not hurt the environment in any way, shape, or form. And we know that's not going to happen, right? There's always trade-offs along the way. So I think that, like I say, bang for my buck, nuclear power is probably the best way to go, especially as long as it's regulated and controlled. And for Alex out there, I would recommend an ETF. And they're fairly low liquid right now. Fairly low liquidity, meaning there's not a lot of volume. So if you're looking to buy a large block, you want to do so very strategically. I would say buy a little bit at a time, just so you don't move those markets. I mean, moving something like URAN, URAN, you know, let's just show this on a 5-minute basis so you can get an idea of what your trade might enter into. You know, at 10:10 this morning, it traded one share. Like one share. If you went to buy 100 shares, you'd be one of the highest spikes of volume of the day on this thing. So you just got to be very, very careful on illiquid securities. Even things like NLR, which we looked at, much more volume. But, you know, if you were to buy 5,000 shares or something, you're going to move this market dramatically. So be very careful if you do that. Wind. Yeah. Wind is another one that's great, but then, of course, people will say that it costs so much concrete to build the infrastructure and the foundation to base those big giant wind turbines off of, and all the energy used to make them and then to transport them down these. They have to build roads to get them out to the middle of nowhere because they can't put these big wind towers in your cities, right? You got to have them in the middle of nowhere. Well, you got to build infrastructure to get it out there, and that wastes energy. It always seems like there's some dark side to every good piece of energy that we look at. Right, Jim? One share. Toby says it kills all the birds, right? There's certainly that aspect to it. I don't know if it kills all the birds. Not all of them. But I'll tell you what, you got a flock of geese flying into a wind farm. You got a lot of dinner down at the bottom of that. Okay, let's go into what happened today. And, you know, you guys were talking about my trade on wow, I can't even think today. On Circle, CRCO. That ripped back up today. We had this huge update for Circle. I'm not worried, guys. Again, we'll keep on holding this one. Felt so good yesterday because it just looked like that immediate sell-off was coming. But Circle was up 10% today, rallied another 1.3% in after hours. So we'll have to wait. I got another whole week to go before we get there. I was kind of hoping I could be out by this Friday, but we'll see. I'm still gunning for double digits, and I'll hold on to that one. Now let's go look at some of the more interesting things of the day. I'm going to start at the top and work my way down, just because, as Margaret pointed out, this pattern here is really, I did not think it would move this fast. You had a huge update today for crude oil, 4.88% move up in crude oil, and that is certainly making it look like it could fulfill this measuring object target on that inverse head and shoulders here on crude oil. So that is a great one. I mean, at that pace, we could be there by middle of next week or something, isn't it? I'll get to that in just a sec, Big Up. So this was probably the highlight of the day, is watching how quickly this moved. You know, with that little hesitation yesterday and then big surge to the upside. You know, like I say, trend is your friend. Trend's your friend to the bend at the end, so I expect this to kind of keep on moving here. To Big M's point, he says, isn't the Genius Act getting voted on in the next day or two? Yes. There's a vote that is supposed to be going today for the Genius Act. And I don't expect it to pass first, right? I think they'll go, no, I want this and these provisions put in there. But last week, I think when I did Monday Morning Must Knows, the expectation was it was going to be done this week. I feel like it's more that it's going to happen next week, but within the next week or two, we should have the Genius Act pass through. And then that goes back to our discussion from yesterday, which really does look very positive for crypto and digital assets. So, as Steven points out, he says that move crushed the airlines today. Yeah. I mean, obviously, one of your major costs is surging. Now, the crude oil price isn't exactly what airlines are using, but that does factor into their cost structure. So you look at like UAL, you had a 5.4% slide today. American Airlines, they were down 6.59%. You had Love, a little bit better, only down 2.43%. But yeah, certainly when you have a big down day like that in the price of crude oil, big update in crude oil, it's going to hurt airline stocks or any very heavy energy oil dependent company. Now, this also is, you bring up something interesting that I didn't mention, Stephen, and sometimes when I get talking to these shows, I just go off topic. But if you look at that chart of crude oil and you are expecting this, and let's just say that you saw this and like, okay, I expect crude oil to rally significantly, a logical play would be to say, who's this going to hurt? Right? Kind of like when I'm looking at that dollar selling off, okay, the weaker dollar is going to boost the equity market. So if I feel like the trend on that dollar is really strong to the downside, then I'm going to look at companies specifically which would benefit. So I could, instead of just being bearish on the dollar, I could be bullish on certain companies. Instead of being bullish on crude oil, I could be bearish on certain airline stocks. So there's always that good for one, bad for another type of relationship that happens in markets, especially when you look at things like the 10-year bond, right, which is one of your worst performers today, now 1.2%. If this continues to move up, you're going to start to see Toll Brothers and Lennar and real estate markets start to have a bit of an issue. But I think we're still a ways away from that. But yeah, I like that point. You heard the act passed? I did not see that. I know they were talking about it. I didn't see the final vote on it. So, but Aga, I'm always doing a million different things. I could be behind. I could there is a chance I could be behind. Let's see. I think I'm going to go through our top 8 and then we'll go to the tariff deal. So crypto didn't really do much today. We just feel like we kind of hesitated. It really has a hard time staying above this 110,000 mark. We broke above it on the futures today, but now we're back down. We dropped $820 on the futures market in the last 24 hours. You are at 109. So still holding a great number. I still feel very confident what's going on with Bitcoin. The chart does look great, but we were down on the day 0.7%. Now, the indexes, which were kind of the great gravy train moving this to the upside, just higher highs, higher lows, particularly with the NASDAQ, they took a bit of a reprieve, and a lot of that was due to Magnificent 7 today. So our Magnificent 7 down here at the bottom, you had Amazon down 2%. You had, I actually was looking at selling puts on Amazon today, but I just did not, the premium was not that high, which is encouraging for bullishness, right? If the premium for puts on a 2% down day is very, very low, that means no one's looking to buy puts and mean there's more bullish sentiment. So it feels like that's just kind of a one-off day. We shall see, but I did not sell puts today on Amazon because the premium wasn't good enough. Apple down 1.9%. I don't care. I can't trade Apple anyway. Nvidia was down 0.78%, but look at that trend. I mean, this is still just absolutely gorgeous. Meta was down 1.18%, but still, beautiful trend, ripping to the upside. Google, 0.6%, 0.68 slide. Starting to look stronger, but it's nowhere near as strong as these other Magnificent 7 stocks. I think Google's got problems ahead, especially as the judge comes out with the verdict on if they should break up Google, but that should be about in August, so we got some time before that happens. Tesla. I also looked at selling some puts on Tesla today, but just didn't want to do it. Didn't feel like the premium was worth it. I'll wait, and if I get a bigger sell-off day, maybe I will. I'm long-term bullish on Tesla, as you guys know. I do expect more volatility along the way. It was up 0.1% of the day, but that was kind of near the low. I mean, it was up much more than that, gapping up. A lot of positive talk about Robotaxi Day, and I think that there was a lot of expectation built into that, and then it was kind of not that great. Microsoft. 0.36% gain, your best performer for the Magnificent 7s. And yeah, it's funny. You look at this chart, and you all look at this beautiful Microsoft chart since April. It's absolutely fantastic. But I look at this big gaping hole here in the chart. And I've told you guys this many times. My mentor years ago was always like, gaps are going to fill. Gaps are going to fill. And you have a huge gap in here between $395 and $425. I mean, it's a $30 gap that it just gapped and continued to run. Now, at some point in time, that will probably fill. It just feels like it's just going. Just gonna fill that gap, but not right now. This thing looks way too good, especially look at this long-term chart. Let's go to a weekly here to really paint a bigger picture of what's going on in Microsoft. So Microsoft is at all-time highs yet again. At least on the weekly candle here, you've got an all-time high put in during the week, and right now it's closing to be an all-time high as well for Microsoft. Phenomenal move here for Microsoft. What does it say? To tipping when you use a robotaxi? No tipping. No way. Robotaxis, no way. There's not going to be no tip. That's going to make it even better. I saw some analysts out there saying that how stupid robotaxis were and how we're not going, that you'll never get Americans to give up their cars. And I don't think anybody in here would ever think that a robotaxi would cause you to give up your car. But let's say you're married, right? If I was married and my wife had a car and I had a car, I would probably cut down to one car. I would probably cut down to one vehicle so we have it anytime we want to go family trips or whatever. And then any local stuff, I'd be using robotaxis. I guess it all boils down to what's the cost, right? If I can get a car that, let's say I lease a Tesla, and that costs me $500 a month all in for a lease, and I can use a robotaxi and use that whenever I want, it ends up costing me $300 a month, well then mathematically it would make sense for me to use the robotaxi. It all depends on how much you use it, how far you're driving, etc. So I think there's a lot of people that would maybe forego that second vehicle and use robotaxi. As I mentioned, if you can take your Tesla, park it in your driveway, and just hit a button and it now goes and picks up people and auto refills the energy and etc., I might actually buy a Tesla. Therefore, it's going to be paying some of its bills. How MSFD gets back there, market's going to be yes. We'll get to that one. So yeah, I certainly don't think we should be tipping a autonomous vehicle. You did a great job doing what you're supposed to do. You know, one thing I loved about when I got to Italy is America's a tipping culture. Nowadays, if you don't tip 20%, it's an insult, right? I remember when I was a kid, if you tip 15%, that was fine. Now it's like if you don't tip 20, you're being rude to the server. Or you go to Jersey Mike's and the person makes you a sandwich and they spin the thing around and you got to pay 20%. No, you just did your job. There's no tipping here. When I moved to Italy, there was no tipping, and they started to realize Americans were big tippers, so they would tend to fight for the American customers because the Americans would leave 15, 20%, whereas Italians, they might leave you $1 on a $100 table. Now here's $1. Crazy. And no weird questions from the taxi driver or making you feel uncomfortable. Yeah, I know. Especially as a woman, I think as a single woman, like driving around in an Uber can be a bit nerve-wracking. All right, let's see. Steve says if Microsoft gets down and fills that gap, we'd be down big. Well, we can calculate that out. If Microsoft, which is one of the heavier components of most of the broad market indexes, closed that gap, that'd only be a 16% slide. And I say only, right? You're like, oh, that's way too big, way too big. Yeah, it would certainly be a correction in the market. Now let's take that and let's assume that the market drops 16%. Just to put it into perspective, I always like, when we say, oh, it's going to be down huge, let's see what 16% would look like for the S&P. That would bring us back down to these lows we achieved back in April. So would it be that bad? It sounds horrible, right, Steven? You're like, oh, this would be catastrophic if Microsoft filled that gap. No, not really. It really wouldn't be that bad. Anyway, I just wanted to share that one. So funny. At the beginning of the year, I had drawn out a little map talking about if we did not resolve these trade wars, that we'd be in a recession by, I had it here at the end of June. And looks like that is probably going to not happen. All right, what do we got going on in chat? People in big cities have terrible time finding parking, or it's expensive. Totally, Dakota. Like, I don't have that issue. I live outside of a big city, but if I lived in, San Francisco or right downtown in a major city, yeah, I would use an electric vehicle. I would use a robotaxi, Waymo, whatever. Absolutely. Robotaxi may not be big in Phoenix, but on the West Coast and Europe, I would think would be huge. Or the East Coast, yeah, in the East Coast. Let's see, what else we got? Waymo not doing well in A. These, yeah. And this was my concern. We had that question yesterday about Tesla. And I was just concerned that in Austin, Texas, they're also having riots right now. And, they could easily be going after these robo-taxis as they're rolling around town. It's just, I don't feel like anything is safe. So you just err on the side of caution, at least for me. Here's your Tesla daily chart. I'd much rather play it safe than take a big shot at, loading up on Tesla for the robo-taxi day. And all of a sudden, they attack all the robo-taxis and vandalize everything and create mayhem. How many of your neighbors have, Margaret, how many neighbors in my neighborhood have EVs? A lot. Yeah, I can think of quite a few. Not everybody. I would say, if I'm just kind of in my mind, I'm running down the block right now. Got, I would say out of the 20 houses on this street, not that many. But in the other parts of the neighborhood, yeah, I have probably 4 people that I can think of right now out of 20 houses have an EV plug in their driveway. But yeah, and I think it's going to get more and more and more. But there's other areas in my neighborhood, it seems like the whole block is Teslas. It's kind of crazy. Listen, does anyone else think it's odd? We've had very little detail on the U.S. trade deal agreement, and it's supposedly been shaken hands on. Okay, let me go right into that. Thank you, Liz, for the segue. Here we go. So I love AI, as you guys know. So here's the tariff deal, and I asked it to show a peaceful resolution to the trade tariff war with China, and it gave me this picture. I love it. It actually did a great job with Trump's face, a great job with Xi Jinping's face, but notice the pin on the lapel of Xi Jinping of China. It's an American flag. I thought that was pretty funny. Thought that was a pretty darn good one. Anyway, what is the deal? It's a very limited agreement, and this is very indicative of what Trump did on The Apprentice. You say something that sounds grandiose and complete, but it's not. It's a very small part. So in this deal, it was predominantly and primarily about rare earth metals being sent back to the United States, making sure that we have that locked in. And it's, if I read correctly, it's for 180 days. So this isn't even like a permanent long-term thing. This is a contract for 90 days for rare earth minerals. And I didn't see the concession side for the U.S., but I think it was, we will allow Chinese students to come back to universities, etc. like that, and visas, etc., etc. It did not specify anything about chips. It did not specify anything about the design or manufacturing of these chips, which I think is the biggest issue for the United States, is intellectual property and chip design and stealing it and then becoming the leader in AI, which is probably going to happen anyway. You also had Scott Bessent add a little bit of Trump flair to it by saying that China is not a very reliable trade partner, which, let's not inflame things, right? Let's be courteous and kind unless you're trying to agitate someone. In this case, that might be what's going on. So I don't feel like this was any deal, but the industry, the market is calling it a deal. It's really not a deal. We got rare earth metals in exchange for some minor things, but this does not solidify permanent resolution, which, again, to my statements at the beginning of all this, is that yellow box on the S&P here. I said if we don't get resolution, we'll probably be in a recession by then, but we haven't. That hasn't happened, right? It just kind of keeps dropping and dropping and rising and rising. I expect it to be dropping and dropping off of uncertainty. But this pause, which ends on, the 9th of July, we got another month here, that pause on tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs, will be removed. And according to Scott Bessent, the tariff pause will remain in place for anybody who's actively negotiating with the United States. If a country has not come to the table to negotiate with the U.S., then they will remove that pause and full-on reciprocal tariffs and then some. So that's where we're headed. Volatility is not gone. This soap opera, this drama will continue with China. So yeah, maybe that's why Trump has that smug look on his face, a little bit of a smirk. They both do, right? The AI created, I think, a good picture because they're probably both thinking, I hate this guy. I hate this guy. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this deal. We're not getting anywhere. But we have to tell that we have to tell the world that we're progressing and making a deal. But the picture looks absolutely hilarious anyway. They need to address the IP theft in the deal. Yep. And I think that's the main reason why this has not been resolved, because that is a pretty significant portion of global trade is intellectual property theft. Adam says, when entering a trade, do you prefer limit or market order entries? So for me, it depends on the situation. If there's three types of entries, you've got what's called a limit, a zone, and a confirmation entry. It all depends on my belief in where that stock is going or whatever security it is. So most of my stuff today, especially with the option side of things, I'm using limit orders. I got a specified price. This is what I want to get in at. That's all I'm going to take. If it's something like a momentum trade where there's a momentum breakout, I'm looking to jump on that momentum as it moves, then I'm going to be doing a market order. You got to be careful, because if you do a market order in a market in a security that doesn't have a lot of liquidity, like some of those ETFs we looked at earlier, you're going to get incredibly bad fills. So you got to know the market that you're playing in, the security that you're trading, before you ever hit that market buy button. If you're using stop losses, always market. You never use a limit with a stop. You could prevent yourself from getting out of your position. Great question, Adam. Let's see. These two men will be okay regardless. Yeah, they'll be fine. I think, the conference, not the conference, but we had the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. So happy anniversary to all the Army veterans out there. Trump gave a speech, and I was a little nervous that he might use it as a platform to go after what's going on in California and Austin, but he didn't. I do like that the fact that he kept it very on point, edified what the Army has done for this country and the sacrifices they have made, and just the being proud of who they are. That was awesome. But he did say at the end, you guys know that on the 14th, so what, next week? Just a few days, actually this weekend, there is a parade going on with the military in Washington, D.C., and Trump was great. He says, and if you protesters happen to be in Washington, D.C. trying to protest this, I'm going to let you know that a lot of military is going to be there, so don't even try it. I thought that was pretty good. Anyway, big it's all these market orders when things are moving fast and I need to get in or out in a hurry. Or stop losses, right? Or stop losses. Margaret, if you're at a military parade for the United States, wave an American flag. Right? You better be proud to be in this country. And I agree. I do agree with a lot of the pundits that, if you're waving a flag of a respective country and you're burning the flag of the country that you live in, then go home. You guys know I was born in Germany, and you don't see me running around waving a German flag in protests and rallies. I want to wave an American flag because this is my country, and I'm damn proud of it. Do I support Germany? Absolutely. It's my homeland, but I'm an American. Yep, it's gonna be a big, and Trump's birthday, right, Big Eb? So it's Flag Day, it's Army's birthday, and Trump's birthday. Gonna be a wild one. Very well. The Penguin Island better. All right, what else do I have on here? So I got that one done. I want to get to analyzing a company, but I'm not gonna have time to do that today. We almost made it to the top, so let's finish this. We were kind of working our way. I don't remember which way I was going. I'm not going to skip gold's discussion. There's nothing to talk about here with gold. Russell 2000. Notice what happened with the Russell 2000. I put a line on the Russell we put this on the breakout. So on the breakout on June 6th, we put that up there. That blue line at the top at 2,195. And I said your most logical target as we break out of this is 2,195. And notice the price of the Russell today, 2,194.1. I mean, right to it and then screaming back down. Man, I wish I was there in front of my screen for that one when that happened. That was a beautiful rally right up to it and then just collapsed from it. Really, I think we've gone through everything on here. I have a question from someone who was asking me about, could I analyze Solana? I wasn't going to use this platform here to do like deep analysis on cryptocurrency. Obviously, I teach a cryptocurrency program, so that will probably where I do that. But I may talk a little bit about it. I know that there is questions on Solana versus some other ones, but let's see. Tranquil, but it was also the early bird pricing. Okay, so here we go. Let me go out to this event here, and this is a question several of you have had. As you know, I'm going to be giving a presentation in Las Vegas, and that is going to be on Tuesday morning, 10:30 a.m. till 12:30. It will be called Filtering Chaos, How to Choose the Right Cryptocurrency and Digital Asset Investments. There's a code there that says 065234. Now, I know some of you said you tried to use that code and it didn't give you a discount. I believe that what you're seeing on the site is early pricing. All right, so it's early pricing. It's called the early bird pricing. So that should get you the price you see on your screen. As of July 1st, the prices go up. That's what I was told. All right. So for those who are going, email me, let me know. Maybe we can arrange something after and go have a drink somewhere. But it's funny because I haven't built it out yet. I have all these really cool ideas because I don't want it to be the traditional, typical boring thing. I want it to be engaging and fun, informative, and have you walk out of this presentation going, wow, I know a lot more than I knew before, and I'm excited to look for more. Yeah, Margaret, it's funny because this event, it's called the Money Show Master Symposium. And a lot of it is, I hate to say, it's like old school thinking. It's old school money. So usually my digital asset stuff is not really attended. It's not really that busy because most people want to go into, how should we look for securing our 401k investments? And maybe I need to look at investing in oil drilling companies and things like that. It's like, well, no, the future is digital, man. Let's get in there and learn about digital assets. So, yeah, chat says, deja vu, you're loving Vegas. Yeah, I've always loved Vegas. And by the way, I told you that the Wizard of Oz is going to be at the Sphere. I did go look for tickets today. $158 for, like, awful seats. You want, like, a decent seat there? It's $350 to go see a show. Yeah. No, Margaret, I won't be going back to the pool. At the Money Show Master Symposium, I'm flying in Monday night. I'm going to go to the exhibit hall. There's a couple presentations I want to see Monday night, like a welcome thing. And then I will do my presentation, check out some more exhibits, and then I'm flying out that evening. So a very quick trip for me. No back to the pool. Nope. Do Trading Academy students show up to say hi? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my event is a paid event. Normally, it's like part of just part of the show. This one is a paid event, so you'll have to have a lanyard with your ticket or something to get into the event. But typically I walk around the exhibit hall, and if you see me, feel free to say hi. I'm terrible with names and faces, but just say hi, and happy to say hi. All right, last piece here. I didn't talk about the consumer price index numbers today, but if you saw the tweet that I put out, it's an interesting one. I look at what's going on with the data, and here's my tweet from today. It's just Jerome Powell looking kind of, I don't know what you would call that. He's like, that's like a worried look on his face, and it just says, son of a, with a thought bubble. And my text is, Jerome Powell, after seeing the latest CPI number, it's weird when they say, we're data dependent. That pressure is mounting for that Federal Reserve to lower rates. To me, it is looking more and more and more like they're going to have to give in because they've said they're data dependent, and the data is, for at least 3 months in a row now, inflation's been under control and unemployment stayed the same. And inflation is actually dropping. So that's a pretty positive sign. So to Margaret asked, what about the CME? Let's go look at that Fed funds futures right now and see what the probability is for the June 18th meeting. Mind you, that's coming up here in 2 weeks. Actually, maybe less than that. What's the date today? A week from today, next Wednesday, we get the next rate announcement. And right now, it's 97.6% that it's going to stay the same, right? It's going to stay right where it's at. Let's see if it's changed at all. No, not really. It's pretty much stayed the same. I think, and I would agree with this, I think he should stay the course, but the data every month has been getting more and more convincing that this is, in fact, a soft landing, and they've made it. And I'm not totally sold, but the data is telling us that story. Now, if we go to July 30th, which is the next meeting, notice now we start to see an increased probability of a rate cut. Only a 19% probability of a rate cut happening in July, but that's, shifting a little bit more. And I think that'd be very logical. What's it going to take for that? It's going to take that July 1st unemployment number to stay at 4.2 or less. It's going to take the next core PCE number, which is going to happen here in a couple weeks. It's going to take that number to show deflation or weakening inflation numbers. And same thing for the CPI and PPI numbers. If those four numbers come out favorable, this thing should spike up. And there's a good chance that I would say if we saw the CPI and PPI numbers continue to decline, the core PCE price index numbers decline, and unemployment stay the same or decline, then I think in the next couple of weeks that this number here is going to go from 19.1% to 20, 30, and start to creep on up there. That's a very real possibility. Now, for the end of the year, remember we got 5 FOMC meetings before now and the end of the year. And right now, the forecast says we have a 40% chance of 2 rate cuts, which I think that at this point that does feel logical, right? And remember, you guys have known me long enough to look at this and go, I believe that, or that's totally outlandish numbers. Remember last year, I think I'm already losing track of time. Was it last year or the year before? I think it might have been the year before. We got to December, and they said there was going to be 8 rate cuts that year. 8 rate cuts. Maybe it was this year. I'm losing track of time. And we all looked at it, no way you're going to get 8 rate cuts. No way you're going to get 8 rate cuts. And we didn't get 8 rate cuts. Big Ev says it. Lowering rates helps to pay down the government debt. Yep, that it does. Lowering rates helps pay down that debt. It means that the government can borrow money at a cheaper rate. Now, that doesn't impact the long-term stuff. In principle, you would think that the long-term, like the 10-year, would drop down with it, but that doesn't necessarily work that way. It's more about supply and demand. But just watching that short end of the yield curve drop and get down, let's say, below 4% would be a big catalyst for expansion, growth, and a market surge. So right now it's feeling more and more positive, and that's part of the reason why I've had that big shift in my sentiment on the S&P and thinking we're going to all-time highs. We still are a bit of ways from the all-time high. And this is actually just out of curiosity. I'm curious for the year where we stand. We're just slightly up if I remember correctly. I think as of today, we are up, I think, about 1.59% for the year. 1.57. That's not that great, but at least it's up, right? I know some of you are maybe underwater a little bit. Actually, it's not up. There we go. We got to go there. That's where it ended the year. Yeah. So, okay. There's our exact numbers. I just had to get the exact. I'll leave this here too, so I want to keep tracking it. Right now, we're up 1.57% for the year. Very, very weak considering the swings that we've had. But at least we're up for the year, and we'll see how that ultimately pans out. But for right now, looking absolutely fantastic. Feels like much more, as Dakota says, very close to all-time highs. Yeah, we are very close. And I don't see much stopping this S&P before we get to those all-time highs. So I do think you're going to end up seeing that 6,166 mark get hit within the next few weeks, barring some crazy thing. Trump could go lose it again and start cursing at China or Elon Musk or do something wild, and all of a sudden markets tank. But trend is your friend till the bend at the end, right, folks? And that S&P is telling us stay long, stay strong. I know that is a V for vicious. What a phenomenal about face. I mean, we had this. In 33 days, the market fell 21.6%, and now in just 45 days, we're back up 25%. That is a wicked V there. Very nice. I could do all kinds of V impersonations. What would you say, Margaret? I need NVIDIA to become a must-own stock for all-time highs to come soon. It is a must-own stock. What are you kidding about? Love it, Margaret. Yeah, if you follow him, if you follow that evil little demon who thinks he's a great trader and now runs a hedge, and now part of a hedge fund, even after it's proven and shown in documentation the guy lost money through a subpoena of trading records. You picked. Yeah, okay, here's my buy point right here. Okay, I have a buy order at 4,832. Oh, it didn't hit me perfectly. Yeah, whatever, buddy. Fade into obscurity, bud. No one likes you. Beat it. Anyway, what'd you say, Chad? I'm skeptical PPI will rally the market. Institutions need an excuse to clean up liquidity. Well, I don't know if it's necessarily the institutions need an excuse to clean up liquidity. Obviously, we have PPI numbers coming tomorrow, which I'm going to get to right now. Could it rally the market? I guess you have to ask yourself, what would it take for PPI to rally the market? So here's the CPI today. And CPI was expected to come out at 0.2, and we came out at 0.1. And again, we could look here and get every analyst's opinions about where we are. Oh, we were really low. I always like to go back and look at the big picture historically. Where are we with relative to historical data? I'd argue we're very low right now, at least these last 4 months on CPI. These are great numbers to have. I think if we can continue this for the next 3 to 6 months, it's going to be a very different discussion. So the PPI number, which comes out tomorrow, let me bring the calendar up here and go to Thursday's action. This one is a bit more interesting in my opinion because we were at a negative 0.5. We had 2 months of huge drawdowns in producer price index numbers. Remember, that's what it costs producers to make this basket of goods and services. What does that tell you? I'm just curious what it tells you guys. How much time we got? Oh man, 3 minutes. What does it tell you here? When you have producer price index is showing a contraction, deflation, meaning that for producers the prices have dropped, and for consumers the prices have stayed the same, if slightly dropped. But I'll call it stay the same. How do you extrapolate that into an opportunity? For me, and I'm waiting for you guys to type in something here, but for me, it tells me that probably the next quarter's earnings are going to have some really good numbers for producers. Why? Because their prices dropped 2 months in a row significantly, whereas consumer prices stayed about the same, which means more profit for businesses. So, our Q2 numbers could be really good, and that could be another big catalyst for market move. But that's just how I would interpret that data. Yeah, margins are getting higher, Andres, because the cost to make this widget is getting less for the producer, but they're charging the same. So their margins are getting better. No, not lower, right? Margins are getting better. And that means earnings. So let's see what happens in Q2. Earnings season rolls out. We're a couple weeks away from earnings season rolling out, but that's it for tomorrow. Really is the PPI numbers. You'll notice on the screen, we've got a couple other little pieces for the U.S. You've got natural gas storage. You have a 30-year bond auction. I know I didn't get to talk about the 10-year bond auction, but as is, we always have so much. What was that? What was what? Margin better earnings. I don't know what was what, Margaret. Not sure what you're referencing. What was that? Anyway, let me go to your last piece, which will be earnings calendar. Let's go to my earnings calendar right there. Oh, what was that? Sorry. So this is it plugs in the bottom of your cell phone and it connects to wireless microphones. So I do the Monday morning, I do the market update on Twitter. I have these little, so this little pack here with like dual microphones. So it's like a little wireless microphone. This plugs into the bottom of my phone and I record that. Which is the best nuclear company to buy as an investor? I couldn't tell you. And I think, Michael, that was kind of the premise of today's show is I just don't know. If I had to pick one right now and say, Merlin, gun to my head, you have to pick a nuclear energy stock right now to buy, I'd probably say SMR. And I know that they've already gone they've gone nuclear to the upside, all right? But I'm looking at the deals that SMR has with everything. They have, with all the big names, SMR has big time deals with Amazon, with Meta, with Google. And to me, that makes them the lead dog. When you've got the backing of companies that have hundreds of billions of dollars in cash and making a full-on commitment to invest in expansion. Sorry, Big Eb. Sell those puts, buddy. Sell some puts on it. Oh, yeah. If I had to choose, I would say SMR. Maybe not today. I mean, after a 20% pop, I'd wait for it to drop a little bit lower. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me for today. We hit the hour mark. I hope you all enjoyed today's show. Alex, thank you for sending in your question about nuclear energy. Again, I have my areas of expertise, and nuclear energy is not one of them. I'm more of a price pattern person. But if we look at the trend and the current demand for nuclear energy, or just energy, period, we have to find out the fastest way to help achieve that. In my opinion, that's going to be nuclear to feed the demand that's coming for electric vehicles, for AI, for robotics, all that stuff. I think it's going to be much, much more. But yeah, it's going to be quite some time. It could be years and years and years before we actually get these systems online. But, if the big players, if our Magnificent Seven are doing it and playing that fight, then we should be as well. So thank you, Alex, for that question. If you guys have something you want me to discuss tomorrow, email me, tradermerlin@gmail.com. I will see you guys on Thursday.